There's an absolutely devastating report out about Yemen. Take a look. Up to 85,000 young children are dead from starvation. Save the Children condemns preventable deaths of under fives and calls for an end to the war. Now, the figure is actually a conservative estimate, and it's based on UN data from severe acute malnutrition, which is starvation. And the international body says it's afflicted more than 1.3 million children. So 1.3 million children are starving. I saw another article which alluded to the fact that perhaps 400,000 will die from starvation. But as of right now, it's 85,000. Now, the numbers are even more stark than this because about 14 million people, which is half of Yemen's population, they're currently at risk of famine. And the main reason for this, of course, is because there's a Saudi Arabian border blockade, and the whole point is they're trying to weaken the Houthis, the Shia government in Yemen, and they've strangled civilian access to food, fuel, aid, and commercial goods. So that includes, there's a giant cholera outbreak in Yemen at this moment. And of course that's massively preventable, but they're not allowing in the medicine to ameliorate the situation. So you have a cholera outbreak, you have hunger, you have starvation, you have famine. There's a port where 80% of the goods come in. They're blockading that port. So this is, people, it kind of drives me crazy that it's continuously being referred to as a war. This isn't a war. This is a genocide. That's what it is. They just starved 85,000 young children to death. Now, see, this is an instance where if the government responsible was one of our official state enemies, we would already be in there with guns doing regime change. Since this is a top ally of ours, and by the way, we were aiding and assisting Saudi Arabia with areas to bomb, since it's our top ally, not only is there no slap on the wrist, Saudi Arabia still sits on the UN Human Rights Council. That is unfathomable. That's what that is. And really, this story rips the mask off of the notion that we care about human rights and justice and altruism, and that we're just the world police, and that we mean well. No, we don't mean well. We care about our empire. We care about being the world's sole superpower. That's what it is. We care about natural resources. We care about this geopolitical chessboard where it's us versus Russia, and everything that we do centers around that. And we don't care about the humanitarian toll. We don't care about the dead civilians. We don't care about people who are currently starving, and it's totally preventable. This is a government that we're still selling arms to. What is it? Over $100 billion weapons deal. So they can do a genocide in Yemen, they could starve children to death, and they could massacre Washington Post journalists and chop them up into little pieces. And there's still no consequences. So then there's literally nothing an ally of ours can do where we would say, okay, it's time to actually believe in human rights and to take a stand on principle for justice. There's nothing. There's nothing. So this is one of those stories where just please spare me. If anybody in the establishment cries crocodile tears about, oh, Syria, Assad, oh, so bad and wrong. You're responsible for what you do. What we're doing is we're aiding a genocide in Yemen. You want to stop terrorism in this world? Very simple. Stop participating in it. Stop actively backing the Saudi government. Stop arming the Saudi government. You can sanction the Saudi government. You can immediately apply economic pressure to them to tell them, you can't do this. We're not going to sit by while 85,000 children are starved to death and 14 million people are at risk of famine. The country is totally collapsing, totally imploding. And this is all because it's now a Houthi government that's in Yemen. So there's been a choice made to destroy the government because it's no longer a Sunni government, no longer aligned with Saudi Arabia. It's absolutely devastating. And then, the nerve of the people like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo who still go out there and say shit like, and even Donald Trump sometimes, who still go out there. Iran is the biggest terrorist nation, the biggest funder of terrorism or whatever goofy thing they say. Utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. The Iranian government, yes, they're theocratic. Yes, they're terribly oppressive. Compared to Saudi Arabia, they're a utopia. I mean, they're way ahead of Saudi Arabia in terms of human rights. I mean, Saudi Arabia is... Look at what they're doing. They're committing a genocide as we speak. As we speak. So this is... in a world that made sense, this story would be a game changer. But the world doesn't make sense. And we're just going to sit idly by and do Saudi Arabia's bidding and continue to give them weapons and support as they carry out a genocide with our help. Listen, it's everything you can imagine that's a nightmare. Because they're also flat out bombing open-air markets and mosques and schools and hospitals, and they're not even trying to hide it. And those weapons have English writing on them. So they know that we're fueling this. I mean, look at that picture. That's just... And that's honestly one of the more tame ones. When you type in Yemen, when you go to Google Images and you type in Yemen starvation, it ain't pretty. They need to stop this, and they need to stop it now. We got to listen to Eisenhower, man. The military-industrial complex. War and devastation, it's very profitable for a small number of people. And in this country, they've tied an amazing number of jobs to warfare. We got to transition off of that warfare economy. We can, have millions of jobs created in a green technology economy. But we have to stop basically selling death and destruction around the world. Probably the best way to cut back on terrorism is to stop arming terrorists. Whether it's the Saudi government, whether it's so-called moderate rebels in Syria and Yemen. We got to stop, man, because this is as bad as it gets.